The year is 1936. From corner lots and pastures all across America, model airplanes are taking flight like a flock of gentle, tissue-winged creatures on a soft summer evening. Since Charles Lindbergh's spectacular solo flight to Paris in 1927, young people by the millions have been greeting the dawn of the air age by building and flying miniature aircraft. While the sport of model flying is soaring high on this wave of popular interest, the science of aeromodeling is in its infancy. Models are flown free flight with no means of control from the ground. Most are powered by tightly wound bundles of rubber strip. A few, in the hands of ambitious, innovative young men, carry a cantankerous first generation of two-stroke gasoline model engines. In this atmosphere of enthusiasm, widespread participation, and growth, a small group of leading modelers dreamed of an organization that would nurture and direct model airplane activity and speed development of aeromodeling technology. That dream took form as the Academy of Model Aeronautics. Half a century later, a mature AMA, whose ranks included some of these same pioneer modelers, dreamed of a headquarters site that would encompass not only business offices, but also a first-class museum and a model flying field that would serve as an inspiration to modelers everywhere. That dream took form as the National Center for Aeromodeling in Muncie, Indiana. In 1996, the AMA dreamed of a once-in-a-lifetime event, a gathering of the great modelers. The original pioneers would assemble alongside the pace-setting modelers of the present day to be honored and to inspire new progress. This event would help to perpetuate the spirit of creative innovation and achievement that, along with a sense of the wonder of flight, is the soul of aeromodeling. That dream became reality as the Celebration of Eagles in July 1996. Model Video Productions and the Academy of Model Aeronautics invite you to meet some of the heroes of aeromodeling. I'm your host, Bob Benjamin. Welcome to the Celebration of Eagles. All around us are the guys who made aeromodeling what it is today and the models they did it with. We're going to take you back to the very beginning to meet Bill Brown, designer of the first successful production gas model airplane engine, and his collaborator Maxwell Bassett. Here's Bill showing off one of his latest mini CO2 motors. Let's let Bill and Max share with us firsthand how history was made.
After about September 1930, I started to try to make a gas engine for model planes. I first got that idea in 1926 when I was 15 years old, and tried to find out how the gas engines work. Well, it took about 4 years to get enough information to attempt to build it. But in September 30th, I began to work on the engine in my father's home workshop. It took about until December before I could try running it. And at that time, I didn't have much time to build models anymore, but that was no problem because Maxwell was keeping tabs on making the engine. I can remember when we had enough of it put together to try starting it over in Max's back porch, try to put different kind of fuel in it to get it to go. And it wasn't easy, but after several months, we learned enough about two-stroke engines and about that engine to get it to run. And Max made the first plane. I have a picture of it in our book.
I kept dreaming about the idea that you could make an airplane that would have an engine in and it would make a noise. I mean, this was the thing that intrigued me when I met Bill. And Bill was fooling with a little two-cycle engine. And just the idea that you could put something in an airplane that would look like an engine and it would have a propeller on the front of it was a very intriguing thing. I would dream at night about this, How could you do it? And of course, Bill came along, and then it was obviously intriguing. We both were interested in it, and it went on, and we waited for about almost a year and a half or so of experimentation. And finally, when we got an engine that was running, that really could run.
That was the engine that I designed when I was a senior at Frankfurt High School.
Right.
And the year was 1932. I graduated from high school in February 32, but I had made the engines that were now to become the Brown engines that we're talking about.
Right.
And we put an engine like that in a plane that Max made and put it out front the same way we did before. Instead of struggling off the ground about 4 feet high, it swooped off the ground
And went up into the trees.
and came down between two houses in the bushes. But we didn't realize how much power it had, but we still remember that.
That's right, very much so. And the airplane got to be an order of magnitude bigger and heavier, but mostly heavier, not necessarily just bigger. So the airplane had to fly much faster than anything I'd ever thought about before. So if you were launching it or taking it off the street, it was a big action because you needed lift to get this weight into the air. I guess they weighed, what, about 3 or 4 pounds?
Yeah,
About 4. Yeah, fairly heavy compared to any models.
1933 Nats is when Max won every first place that he went into. It must have been 4 of them.
Yeah, I then got smart and I decided I was going to build an airplane for each competition.
Yeah.
I built a cabin model for the Melville. I built a stick model for
Yeah, the stick model, all with gas engines.
and different ones. And I went to the contest with 3 different airplanes. Right?
And most of the people had never seen gas-driven model planes. They
No, I'd seen them.
even came from California and said they were glad they came. And Frank Allen came to me and said, "Do you remember back when I met you?" And he refreshed my memory. What had happened was that Frank explained he was at the Hadley Field model gas model contest in 1935, and most of the engines around then were Brown. There were not many other factories, and I would go around and see anybody whose engine would not run. Frank's engine wouldn't run, and I came up to him and said, "Can I help you?" Frank looked up to me and said, "Do you make model planes?" And I was sort of Max. I said, "No." He said, "Don't bother me." So I walked off, and Charlie Grant rounded me up a few minutes later and came back to see Frank Ailing, and Frank said, "I thought you said you didn't make model planes." I said, "No, just the engines." His problem was that the propeller was broken and the timing cam had been put on the wrong way, so he couldn't possibly run it until that was corrected. I had forgotten all that, but Frank himself reminded me.
Thanks, Bill and Max, for helping get all this started. Look how far we've come. Everyone here wants to meet everyone else here. Models are everywhere. The ones you heard about, the ones you built when you were a kid, the ones you wish you'd built, the big contest winners you read about in the magazines. Look at them all. The replica 1950s hobby shop is like a magnet to us. Or is it a dream warp time machine? You can't get enough of looking here. Even if you don't remember this stuff from back when, you know it's how we got to where we are. Much of the celebration of Eagles is about how modeling began. Often our first thoughts about this history are of free flight. In the beginning, rubber-powered free flight was the only game in town. The early gas engines are a trip back in time all by themselves. Bantam, Wavell, Atom, Rogers, Baby Psych, Bullet, Super Cyclone. How many do you know? Gas engine free flight before World War II sparked the beginning of real growth in aeromodeling technology. Carl Goldberg's Zipper, as kitted by Comet, changed the face of free flight competition just before the war. And the good old Zipper is still with us today as a favorite of old-time free flight modelers. But let's go back even further in modeling time. Master free flighters Vic Cunningham Sr. and Jr. are flying an example of the classic free flight of the 1920s, the rubber-powered twin pusher. 60 plus years ago, this was a common sight on fields all around this country. Free flight is just what the name implies. You pre-adjust the model, turn it loose, and it's on its own. The years after Lindbergh's flight in 1927 saw rapid growth of interest in aeromodeling competition. Refined designs, such as this rendition of the classic Corda Wakefield, began to appear. The full fuselage, tractor prop model became the norm, as did more exciting performance. Rubber power was still high-tech, and a lot of effort went into improving model design. Mechanical winders, freewheeling propellers, and attention to streamlining made the difference between winning and not quite good enough. The performance of a good rubber power model is always a surprise when you don't know what to expect.
This is a rubber scale model. It was designed by Chester Alonzo in 1939, and it's called Alonzo Puss Moth. It is a kind of scale model of a puss moth, de Havilland design from England. Chester was very successful with his. He won the AMA Nationals twice with it. And I've been very successful with this model. I won the SAM Champs 2 years ago here at Muncie with this model. What we're going to do is I'll put it in what we call a winding stooge that holds the model, and we'll wind it up and do some flying, okay? Now this winding stooge looks like an oarlock. It holds the back of the airplane. There's a little pin that goes across the back of the airplane. What this does is allows me to do this all by myself. I don't need any help. All right. When we wind the model, we have what we call a winding tube. This is an aluminum tube. This is an aluminum tube, and this tube we put down inside the model and before we wind, and what this does is, in case the rubber breaks, it stops from shattering the airplane. All right. 750 turns, and I would consider that sociable. I say sociable. If this were a real hot contest, I would probably put near 1,000 turns in it. Now, what we're doing is removing the winding equipment, and we'll put the propeller on it. All right, I'm about to light the fuse. This fuse will burn down. It's set for about 1.5 minutes, and when it burns down, it will burn this rubber band, and it'll cause the tail to pop up. What happens is that's the end of the flight, and the airplane will come down. Okay? All right, let's go fly. I'm going to go straight ahead. It should go slightly right. All right? Model building is really craftsmanship. It's really solving problems. It's really, there is a wonder of flight. And no matter how long you're at this, or how jaded you think you got, you can't believe the high you get to watch something that you designed, built, and created, and the wonder of it all, it flies.
Here's the red Corda still cruising overhead. The pop-up tail dethermalizer is still set. There it goes. If a thermal updraft had caught the model, this is the only thing that would have brought it back. It drops just fast enough to escape the lift without damage on landing. Let's have a closer look at a sister ship being assembled for flight. This is classic stick and tissue construction. It takes a light touch, but it works. Here's a low-power test flight to check the trim. And 2 rubber jobs retrieved downwind. Here's another flight at low power just for the camera. The quiet grace of rubber power free flight and the sun shining through clear doped colored tissue weave a special spell. Retrieving at the end of a flight is a unique part of the free flight experience, both an accomplishment and a relief. Here's a closer look at the classic zipper. Get that DT fuse lit. A last check on the engine, and an easy hand launch. 2 is even better. The old ignition engines have a softer sound than the ones we're used to. There she goes. This is a senior Playboy with a Super Cyclone engine. Get it running. Advance the spark lever. Lean the mixture. Hang on to that thing. And get the dethermalizer fuse lit correctly. Now set the engine shut-off timer and turn her loose. Look at that climb. And here's one of the zippers in the glide. The tail pops up just in case.
This is an original model that I designed back in 1948, and over 3 years, I finally won at the Nationals in '52, and at that time I called it past due, and that's what it was due. But it's nostalgia. It's the original model that was flown back in '52. The wings and tail have been recovered, and that's about the extent of it.
Lighting that DT fuse is a necessary ritual. If the model hits lift without it, you usually lose it. Trip the engine timer and go. Here's a little cabin rubber job, a quick flight just for fun. Look at past due floating in that big, clear blue sky. Gas-free flight is a short, timed engine run, and then the best glide you can get. This is what it's all about. How about that for close-in, low-key flying? She's coming in just about on her feet. If the free flight model catches thermal lift, you get a longer flight, which is the aim in competition. You also depend on the pop-up tail to get your airplane back. This time she's dropping in at the far edge of the field for a nice, easy retrieve.
This program is made possible in part by funding provided by Midwest Products Company Incorporated. Since the late 1940s, Midwest has provided aeromodelers with a wide range of kits, balsa, and accessories of consistently high quality. And by the Radio Controlled Hobby Trade Association, working in partnership with the Academy of Model Aeronautics to encourage the growth of model hobby activities in the United States.
To me, this event is incredible to me because I'm now shaking hands and rubbing elbows with many of the heroes of my youth. A lot of these guys were people that I read about and adored as a youngster. You know, everybody talks about, well, when they were a kid, they were trying to emulate Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio and Ted Williams and so on. In my case, it was always the George Aldriches and the Palmers and the Madman Yates and the Woody Blanchards and all of the real people that are the history of model aviation. And I was real fortunate when Sally and I got together. She'd never seen a model airplane, but she took to it pretty quickly. And the people are what make it. We've traveled around the world. We have friends around the world, and it has been my life. Period.
It's just changed everything. We've had a lot of fun. We've met a lot of people. We've done crazy things. We've stood in the rain in every continent on Earth, I think. It rains at every major contest. I don't care what the weatherman says. It rained in South Africa in their desert season when we were there for World Championships. I think the biggest, as Dave said, the biggest joy is the people that you meet and stay friends with and converse with for the rest of your life.
Well, I'd have to say it was the driving force in my life. The things you learn from modeling as a kid and coming up, you learn patience, you need perseverance, you learn failure and how to accept it. Many times in industry and jobs I've had, I did electromechanical design for the pilot trainers for the 707 for TWA and American Airlines, and there were some tedious times. And the things you learn on the building board, building models, the tedious aspect of it that you had to fight and overcome, you learned as a kid come automatically to you when you're an adult. And it stayed with me all my life. I've never been that far away that I couldn't always go back and relate to something that I did that helped me through it. My dad was not much of a modeler or interested in mechanical things. He'd take a fishing reel apart and put it back together and have parts left over for another one. But my mother said, you let him alone. When he's playing with those model airplanes, I know what he's doing. And it kept me probably out of a lot of trouble I might have got into, you know. But I spent every penny I get my hands on and every waking hour flying models, building or flying one.
Started modeling at the age of 10. And I'm now 72, so that was a while ago. And I happened to turn 18 on Pearl Harbor Day, 1941. So a few months later, I enlisted in the Air Force as an aviation cadet. Ended up flying 52 missions as a B-24 pilot at 15th Air Force. After the war, I came home, completed college, went to work for NACA, the predecessor of NASA, and I'm one of the co-inventors of the Project Mercury space capsule. So all of this, I would say, came about because of my interest in model airplanes. That's really.
Jim Walker's U-Control Fireball kit, introduced shortly before World War II, was the first of a flood of control line designs that changed the face of aeromodeling. Followed by competitors like this Stanzel Shark, the U-Control Fireball brought model flying to the corner lots and ball fields of America. During the 50s, inexpensive small control line models like these, many from kits produced by the Scientific Model Airplane Company in Newark, New Jersey, appeared by the thousands. Powered typically by a Herkimer OK Cub 049, these little carved balsa jobs on 25-foot lines introduced a whole generation of kids to powered model flying. They wouldn't handle much wind and would barely loop, but they were cheap and built fast. Let's have a look at early control line flying with Ward Delano and his ONR 60 powered Shark.
We've got in-flight batteries inside the switch. We use a booster battery to get started here. All right. Put that up. It's already gassed. It's ready to go. We need a little prime.
The old engines didn't always start this easily, and they were tricky to keep going. That was part of flying gas models in the early days. You had to deal with frustration, often while your buddy was on the next circle having a good flight. This is a Barnstormer, a popular stunt design of the early 50s. Here's 3 loops from the inside of the circle. Something's loose in there. There it is. gotta tighten that. That son of a gun has got it upside down over there. Look at him. Let's try this again. There it goes. Get it. Hang on now. Leaner. Let her go. Got it. Oh, nuts. You dumb airplane. Sometimes it was best just to take it home and figure it out there. And the Barnstormer finishes a nice flight next door. That's the way it was sometimes in the good old days. Thanks, Ward. We've all been there. How about another look at an old spark engine? Here's another O&R 60.
And maybe it'll fire.
Yeah, it feels pretty good. She's there. That sure sounds different. Advance the spark and lean the mixture. Sounds good now. In the early 50s, scale control line racing was popular. These three will do a demo race. Here's a Chet Loose Racer, a Commander Little Rocket, and a Mono Special. Each airplane will get a brief solo flight for fine-tuning and warm-up, then we'll put all three up together. These things really pull. There goes the loose. And the Mono Special. Gentlemen, start your engines. There's one off. Sounds like two now. And there's three. Look at that choreography. That's intense. There are no throttles on these models. It's all full power, and you hang on until the gas is gone. But we sure are having fun. Thank you, Jim Moore, Dave Willis, P.R. Johnson, and Chuck Snyder. And that's one down. And another. And there's number 3, back safe. Maybe the most popular of all control line flying categories during the 50s was aerobatics, or stunt as it was called then. Noel Drindak gets his D'Amico stunt wagon started and into the air. Doug Benedetti's All-American Senior is ready to fire up over on the next circle. Noel is flying the all-time stunt maneuver sequence. That All-American is off the ground right now. Is he having fun? Look at that smooth, graceful flying. Ward Delano has brought out a real classic engine, a drone diesel from around 1948. This one is mounted in a hot rock model. This engine is a true compression ignition diesel, used no spark plug and ran on special fuel. It was produced in New Jersey by Leon Schulman, who we'll meet later. That's the sound of real modeling history. Back on the stunt circle, Doug has the All-American really turning. Watch this. Control line flyers are literally in touch with their airplanes. You feel everything when you fly one of these things. Noel has flown out the tank and greases the stunt wagon onto the pavement. That is smooth flying. Here's another stunt job being worked out. That young flyer is really getting into it. These things pull hard, too. The All-American finishes another flight. You run these ships dry and then glide them down.
I started this in 1936. I got started with a gentleman called Carl Goldberg, who helped me get started in it. I've been flying everything in modeling since. And I guess the best thing is it's kept my sanity over the years. I taught college for 44 years and now retired from that, and this is the way I relaxed. I have 12 members of the AMA in my family. We all fly, my children, my grandchildren, and it's a great way. They appreciated, my children in particular, what they've gained in learning about people from all over the world. They've competed at nationals for years, and they've met and have made friends everywhere in the world. My daughter lives in France now and flies over there with 3 of our grandchildren. They have fun, and no matter where we've gone in the country, modelers are the greatest bunch to talk to, and I think that's part of it. There's every economic background, everything you can imagine in modeling, but nobody talks about their job, only about the fun of modeling. Yeah. When I was a kid, if I'd ever dreamed that we would have 1,000 acres for model flying, nobody would believe it. Oh yeah, I remember sitting in the back of trucks and going to Olathe, Kansas for nationals and everything, flying with the Navy, and back all the way, and it's never changed. You love it. It gets in your blood.
It's aero modeling has meant a lot to me for a variety of reasons, and in my particular case, since I'm an employee at the present time of the Academy of Model Aeronautics, it's been part of my livelihood for the last 11 years. I taught school for 30 years, and 30 years of 5th grade, which gives you a general idea of my basic mentality, and retired from that, went to work for AMA as the technical director, and later then served 9 months as the interim executive director, and am now serving as the education director of the Academy. And so it's meant a lot to me in that regard. As far as building and learning, it has meant a tremendous amount to me. For me, my fellow teachers used to wonder how in heaven's name I could teach all day, go home fatigued, and then sit and work on a detailed scale model. And I told them it's a different activity, and it's relaxation to me at that point. The other thing about it is that teaching was always very frustrating in that you could never see the end product of what it was you did. The student came out of your class at the end of the year and you had no idea what impact you had on his total life. But in building a model airplane, once I've completed the plane, I can put it over there somewhere, point to it and say, that is a product of my hand. And that's a very important thing in anyone's psyche.
This program has been funded in part through participation by SIG Manufacturing Company. Since 1951, manufacturers of a wide range of model building products and airplane kits. And by Dubro, manufacturers of the world's finest model products since 1959. Dubro, a name you can count on for hobby accessories.
We're at the Stage Center area, the flying site for RC activities during the Celebration of Eagles. We'll get to see a wide range of models, from Pioneer oldtimer to Pioneer state-of-the-art.
And it is rudder only. And it didn't stay very long because the engine didn't run very long. I thought, you know, this is fun.
Our future is here, sharing the flight line with our modeling past.
We check your frequency for your protection.
Yeah, I know. All right, here we go.
Okay. 8.6, 46.
Return the card in. Sean, do you copy?
No. As long as you give us your AMA card.
The Celebration of Eagles is about aeromodeling progress. It's about the old-time modelers, and it's about our routine flying today of equipment they didn't even dare to dream about. There's a Tri-Squire and a Playboy, a Stormer and a Charger, a quarter-scale Cub. And look at these jobs. We fly these planes now and think nothing of it. This kind of everyday sport flying was only a dream just a few decades ago.
You're clicking? Yep. That suit you? I don't think it's taking hold of the thread. Yeah, it seems to be going in there, but when I see it's coming out this end, then I'll stop. I don't stay in there.
The models change, the modelers don't much. Here's how I made it. Let's go flying. Since the earliest days, scale models have had a special appeal. They've always worked best for the most experienced, painstaking modelers. In recent years, reliable radios have made dream ships like Greg Hahn's B-25 not only possible, but practical for those willing to invest the effort. Remember drawing airplanes in your school notebooks? Bet they look something like this. All this detail and drama are real. Let's give Greg time to get it ready to go. Here's the future, slipping quietly up to greet us. This airplane is the prototype Tiger Kitten, an electric model that performs the way only engine-powered models are supposed to. Look at her move out. This is all about the wonder of flight and about sharing the experience.
It's going. Isn't that pretty?
I love that. Just your hands off the track.
Yeah,
You're just trying to
yeah,
find it out.
keep it right in there too.
Look at what it did there.
It bumped out. It bumped out.
Look at that. It turned it the other way.
Look, it's a right-hand thermal.
Must be.
It's a right-hand
Well, I better
thermal.
trim her for right then, huh?
Put just a little right in it. Now remember where it was.
Yeah.
You get that back around this way. Because you don't know how wide that is.
Yeah.
I think you're still in it.
Looks like it.
That's a right-hand
Yeah.
thermal. Did you see that thing take out
Yeah,
the left
there
side
it
and
is.
start
There it is.
back
There
around
it
to
is.
the right?
Yeah. See it bump again? There it goes. There it is. Looks like it's going out. There's the thermal.
Now you're bumping out of it right there.
Now, which way? Where would you say it is? This
It's
way?
back behind you. It's still left.
Okay.
See, it's going that way.
Okay, I'm going to bring her back around.
Yeah.
Funding for this program is provided in part by Aeronautics Incorporated, continuing to lead toward the future of radio control. Get the advantage with Aeronautics revolutionary radio systems. And by Astroflight Incorporated, pioneers in silent flight. Astroflight is a world leader in the manufacture of top-quality electric power systems for model builders.
Here's a real old-timer, an RC replica of the 1934 free-flight Covell Grant KG-2 built by Joe Covell himself. A real milestone RC design is this Rudder Bug, designed by Walt Good, who was flying radio in the 1930s. The Rudder Bug was the first well-publicized design developed expressly for radio control, rather than being just a converted free flight. Here's a Tri-Squire, flown by Frank Midwest Gertcher himself. During the 1960s, the Falcon series, kitted by Carl Goldberg models, was easily among the most common designs being flown. This one is a senior Falcon. Here's another one. Then considered an ideal trainer for multi-control radios, it is still a great flying airplane today. This quarter-scale Piper J3 Cub is using an 8-channel computer radio and a 2-cylinder, 4-stroke engine for everyday sport flying. This is the heritage of the Eagles passed on to all of us.
How much is it going to be open? Over 1.5 turns right now.
Give it a little bit more than that, because it's better to start rich and then...
Too rich can flood up to it. You got a battery now? Let's get the show on the road. I was a kid that dropped out of high school to get involved with the hobby industry. And as it so works out, I was working for a company cutting balsa wood for his Brooklyn Dodger. The end result was I cut my fingers. So I said, I don't like cutting balsa anymore. But over the years, I worked in the hobby industry for a while, and I was also a machinist for 30 years. But all the different tricks I learned, because I was the machine building, all the different tricks I learned was all from modeling, all the handling of wood, handling of metal. It's all went back to the basics of modeling, and it's where I learned everything, but I never took a lesson in my life.
Here's Joe Covell's KG replica ready to go. John Hunton walks it to the runway. Norm Rosenstock has the transmitter. That sure gets off quick. The modern four-stroke has more power than the 1930s gas engines. The KG looks really slow and stable to our eyes. Imagine how good that must have looked to the modelers flying free flight or primitive RC with models like this 50 years ago.
I was also with NACA, NASA, left NASA to go into the Academy of Model Aeronautics, actually, but it's been constant challenges, problems, solving them, and solving them is a tremendous satisfaction. Right. And every day is new problems.
Great fields you never even thought of getting.
Exactly.
Earlier I said model builders like a challenge. I was a tool maker all my life, and one time I worked for the Navy in Pasadena, and they got an order from the Bureau of Standards to make a gauge for a missile. And 40 tool makers on days looked at it and said it couldn't be done. And I was on a swing shift, and my boss told the day shift boss, he says, I have a spaghetti bender on night. And he says, if he says it can't be built, it can't be built. So he showed me the print, and I looked at it about 20 seconds, and I walked up to the boss, and I said, do you want me to start this tonight? And the thing that scared everybody is that the gauge had a tolerance of 12 inches, plus or minus 1/10 of a thousandth. And everybody looked at that 1/10 of a thousandth, and it scared them to death. Yeah. But I was a model builder, and I said, I'm going to do it. And I did it, and I made it within 1/10 of a thousandth, a 12-inch gauge for the Bureau of Standards.
Yeah,
and that's what model building is all about.
Modeling has been wonderful for me. I started out as a kid, and there were no hobby shops in those days. I'm talking about the early 30s. My first exposure to an airplane is I heard that Cracker Jack candies were sending 2 covers from that and 10 cents, and they send you by mail a little model airplane kit. That was my first exposure to it. And I really took to it and realized that I needed and wanted an education to learn aerodynamics. I went on through school, went to engineering school. The war broke out. Because of my background with modeling and all, I became a pilot in the Air Force. I passed the tests and all. And I was, during the war, I flew B-26s and B-24s. Since then, I went into many other ventures, all in modeling. It was a wonderful experience for me. Presently, I have 2 grandsons that are into this, and they're following in my footsteps, and they're world-class flyers in the RC now. So it's been wonderful, and I hope to do it for another 70 years.
Production funding for this video program has been made possible in part by the Futaba Corporation of America, manufacturers of the world's #1 radio control systems, the choice of champions around the world. And by Model Electronics Corporation, innovative designers and manufacturers of high-performance electric power systems for aeromodeling.
Ready for high-tech? Jet pilot Terry Nitch flew a turbine demo. We'll let the performance speak for itself. Please hold on the active for departing traffic. Turbine time. Rolling now.
Running in, and there's one way out. It's down low, so bring him in. He's coming away from you, so you got the runway.
Right, got the runway clear?
You got the runway.
Here we come.
Way out there. Way out there.
This is where it all begins, with a simple airplane and technology that is readily available to a newcomer.
Of all radio problems are
remember how it felt.
Well, it's like an extension of my family. My wife didn't understand it until when I had the hobby shop. The guys would come in and they'd sit and talk. She says, "You're like a doctor, it's therapy. You can talk about models and you forget about work and you forget about your troubles." And I've been building them since about 1941. The neighborhood bully used to kind of stomp on all us young kids, built model airplanes, which actually changed his whole life too. And I saw one time and I said, "You know, by golly, I'd really like that. Can I buy that off you?" And he says, "No, but I'll teach you how to build it." It's been a great relief for me. I was a policeman for 20 years, and when I came home, I was uptight. I got 3 kids to tell you that. But I could go out and work in the garage for a while, and all at once I was calmed down. Could go in and play with the kids, and it was fine. It's therapy. It's a great sense of accomplishment, and I just love the people. I'd come here if I didn't have a model airplane. We now have 15 grandchildren, and 3 of them are building models now, from the 5-year-olds up. The boys, and there's still some young ones, so we got a bunch coming up yet that's going to be in it. I'm going to have a whole army of modelers. I've already soloed the oldest grandsons, and the youngest at 5 years old come in. They just spent the month of June with us. We had 11 of them there. And first thing he said, "Grandpa, you got an airplane we can build?" First thing he said when he came in the door. You know, he's 5 years old. And we built an airplane and he flew it, one of these little AMA Cub jobbies. Well, I thought it was great. And he wants to do a double winger next. So if you can start them out young and teach kids, I don't think this kid's going to be on the streets.
We watched Greg Hahn getting the B-25 ready. Now, let's enjoy watching it fly. The airplane tells its own story.
This program has been produced in part by funding provided by Great Plains, manufacturers and distributors of leading RC kits and accessories. And by Aerotech Models Incorporated, manufacturers of a new generation of high-tech pre-built exact scale models designed for discriminating modelers who demand only the best in kit engineering.
What better way to collect those precious autographs than on an airplane built especially for the purpose? By Sunday afternoon, the celebration was starting to wind down, but the enthusiasm for model airplanes sure wasn't. The stories went on and on.
I think in many cases it was a feeling of accomplishment when I accomplished something. And then when I would go out maybe to gatherings like this, and people would come up to me and tell me that they had maybe built a model, there were maybe built 2 models, whatever, and it did this or it did that. I had a professor, I worked for RPI in Troy, New York for many years. I was a senior editor of their publications, and I had a professor whose involvement was in rotorcraft. He had what they called a Center for Excellence for helicopters. And he came into my office one day, and after standing there, we were talking about his publishing problems. All of a sudden, he said, he realized the name. He said, "Did you design such and such airplane?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." He said, "You know, that got me started." And I thought, wow, can you imagine that? I've done something. This man is a recognized authority around the world, and he got started on one of my models. That was almost a little too much to handle, you know. But I think something like that is what this has meant to me. To be able to do that, I never thought I would do anything like that. First person I saw was Bill Brown. Now, it's hard to go farther back than that, and to be more important than that man is. And I've met him. I'm not sure I'm ever going to wash his hand. But there are a whole bunch of people. There's Sal Tavey, Leon Schulman, and Bill Winters. I know I won't mention 1/1000th of them all, but a lot of them I know, but there are a lot of that I've never had an opportunity to meet, and I'm hoping to today.
It's just not time to go yet. There's still some more stuff we haven't seen, and I need to get some pictures. The photos aren't for memories, though. They're inspiration for that next project that's going on the board as soon as we get home. High-tech, low-tech, it all comes together with the wonder of flight of a machine we've made with our own hands. And the circle closes. Our dedication to aero modeling keeps us young and inspires a new generation of Eagles to take their place. From Model Video Productions and the AMA, I'm Bob Benjamin. Let's all go flying.